Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Stephanie Michele Sweigart, a licensed and practicing SLP, a school-based SLP out in Los Angeles, California. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm here today with SpeechTherapyPD.com. I am very excited to welcome our guest today, Margo Kinzer Courter, MBA, MA, CCC-SLP, BCS-CL. Margo began her speech language pathology career in inpatient pediatric rehab, and from there, she moved to an outpatient clinic that specializes in language-based learning disabilities. And her medical and educational background of language and language disorders has really provided the foundation of her 30-year career as a speech language pathologist. She continues to work as an SLP. She owns and is the lead SLP at MK Courter Communications. And this is a private practice that's found in Florida, where she currently resides. And she's the author of 3 practical speech and language books. All of them are available on her website. We'll get more information about her resources later, but courtercommunications.com. Welcome, Margo. Thank you so much for finding time to meet with us with all that you're doing right now, all the work that you're involved in.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's great to be here with you.
Yes, absolutely. So happy March to you. March is National Reading Month, which is really exciting because this is a month where we can really celebrate and promote reading. It's really to inspire and motivate people of all ages to read and to read each day if they can. And I'm over here motivating my 7-year-old daughter, who is getting a lot of practice with reading her books in Spanish. She's part of a Spanish immersion school, and we're trying to get some of those English books in too. And this is also the month where Dr. Seuss really comes out of the woodworks. I'm seeing him celebrated in schools as a school-based clinician, and it's fun. A lot of the books are being read with students, and you might see some of those fun staff members coming in and some of those Dr. Seuss character costumes. They're very creative in how they're showing up to work. And this really brings me into our topic that we have today, looking at reading. So as SLPs, we often question our role for students with literacy issues, even including dyslexia. It's like, where do we step in? How can we support our student or our client? How can we support the teachers in the classroom? Or is it even our responsibility? Is that for RSPs or reading specialists, or should SLPs be supporting reading? We know that as speech language therapists, that spoken language is what develops first. This is the foundation, right? Before we develop other skills, such as learning to read or write. But for children who have difficulty with the early development of speech and language, we know that this can later begin to impact their writing and their reading. And each domain of language plays a very important role, a vital role, to be able to move from speaking and listening into reading and writing. So this brings us to your knowledge, Margo, because we know that you are the expert on this topic. This is your arena. So the golden question we really have for you today, for all of our listeners, is what would you suggest are 3 takeaway strategies that speech clinicians should really know to support literacy and reading?
Thank you. So there's a couple things. I want to follow up on one comment that you made in regard to this being National Reading Month. And we have great research that says that students that read outside of school at least 20 minutes a day show substantially higher vocabulary growth. There's some great research by Marzano and Pickering that show that typically developing students can move from about the 50th percentile up to about the 82nd to 85th percentile just by reading in vocabulary, just by reading outside of school 20 minutes a day. So reading is just so important. So what happens when our students are having difficulty with that? And I often get asked the question, what is our role, and do we have a role as speech language pathologists? We absolutely have a role. And as Stephanie just stated, it is definitely speech to print. So probably that one first big takeaway is it is truly speech to print. Students need to be able to attend to the sounds. They need to be able to perceive sounds, discriminate sounds before they can start putting sounds and letters together that they need for reading and writing. So it's so important. And we do have those skills. When Stephanie made the comment about those 5 domains of language, that's the other next big takeaway is I'm going to take you back to, I think, 1978 in Bloom and Leahy. And what they did was Bloom and Leahy took our 5 domains of language and separated it into the form, the content, and the use. And as we look at that form of the language, which is morphology, phonology, and syntax, morphology and phonology are what our students need for reading fluency and accuracy. So from over on that language side, if those skills are not developing for our students, they're at significant risk for difficulty with literacy development, and thus maybe a diagnosis of dyslexia from there. And so, and then as we look at what we talk about, the simple view of reading, which is that decoding piece coming together with language comprehension equals reading comprehension. And so as we move from that decoding, which is that morphology, phonology, and we move to that language comprehension, for us, that's really receptive and expressive language. And we know that morphosyntax is the first piece of both auditory and reading comprehension. So it plays such a vital role in just for our students' development overall, and then taking that to reading comprehension. Really kind of the next takeaway is both of those pieces need to be in place, and we've got the skills. If we move from the form of the language into the content of the language, which is vocabulary and semantics, we know that that's another vital piece of that listening comprehension that's going to go into reading. So those are a couple of just a couple of thoughts in regard to kind of our role, because, and I always say to speech language pathologists, we can stay on the speaking and listening side, or we can go to the wild side with reading and writing. And so
the wild side, I love that.
The wild side. It's the wild side.
Yeah.
It is my love. So I love going speaking and listening to reading and writing, but what we do is really key. And I know we have great reading specialists, but we still have skills that I like to say we rule the school when it comes to literacy, because we have skills that as speech language pathologists that some of our reading specialists don't have. So being able to put together their expertise with our expertise is just magical for the students.
I love that. Well, I loved your course. I took your course on speechtherapypd.com, and the handout. Oh my goodness, you have so much value in your hand. I mean, it's over 30 some pages. I don't even know, have it saved on my desktop. And so I can quickly reference it with my elementary students that I'm working on. And so I can use them with my daughter at home too. And I love how in this course, you're also sharing, you shared Twister, and now there's a mini Twister, like therapy activities and ideas and assessments to consider. There's so much happening inside what you're teaching. And one thing that really stuck out to me, and I was like, oh, this is a really good point. And I think I know this, but I don't know if I was actually doing this. But you mentioned something about when we look at even just our sounds, right? And you're talking about the B sound or the N sound, that B is not buh. And N is not na. And you gave an example about how kids were spelling out banana, but B is b, and N is n. See there, I'm doing, I want to say na. But I found that, so you said, we got to be really clean about how we're announcing these sounds. So that was one thing I was like, oh, I got to be really mindful about when I'm talking about these phonemes, that moving forward, I'm not adding these vowel sounds onto the consonants. There was just so many little tidbits that you shared that were such amazing pointers in that course that I really enjoyed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, and if we have time, let me just share one of my favorite strategies that I talked about. And it's a really easy one. And it is truly just what we used to call pipe cleaners, which we now call Chanel stems, and perler beads or pony beads. And I love this from that discrimination perspective, as you were just talking about keeping sounds very pure. And I love this. And like I said, you can keep over on the speaking and listening, or you can go to the reading and writing. But what you can do is give the student a word. So let's say the word is hot. So what the student does is they say each sound as they move it across. So t. And so what you're really listening for from that discrimination point, did they say, or did they say something similar in sound? Did they say ah, or did they say something more like ah? Did they say t? Did they say d? Because then we can really see that discrimination piece. And if you want to go to the wild side, then what you can have this do is touch each bead, and then write down the letter as they say the sound again that corresponds, after we make sure that they are discriminating those sounds correctly. So it's such a simple tool. You can go to, I'll plug the Dollar Tree here. You can go to the $1.25 tree, which it is now, and you can get 75 Chanel stems for $1.25.
You were calling them Chanel stems, right? I look at that and I think pipe cleaner. Is it?
They are. Well, you know what?
Is it now more PC to call it Chanel?
That's right. Well, I think because not many people have pipes anymore. So if you were to go to the $1.25 tree, you would not find a pipe cleaner. These are now Chanel stems. So yeah, for $2.50, you have enough for all of your students.
Everybody can have one.
What's that, please?
Everybody can have one. And I like how in your course you talked about, now I think your camera is because of the way we're looking at you, but you did talk about in your course moving the beads from left to right in the way that we read. I'm sorry,
right to left.
Right to left. And the reason, the way that we would read, what would come first? Yes.
Because once they put so the reason we're going to move from right to left, so just the opposite that we read and write, is because when the students use this to be able to spell the word, you want them to be able to touch the beat so that the H is first and then the O and the T.
In the order. Yes, that's what I meant. Yes. So when you're looking at it, it's in the order that you would be reading, writing, speaking. Yes.
Yeah. So you're actually going to move the beads. The beads are going to start all the way to the right and you're going to move them to the left.
You're going to move them to the left, and then when you're going to sound them out from, or say them, the words or whatever, if it's a sentence, or the sounds for the words from left to right. Or you mentioned syllables. You could do it with syllables.
Absolutely.
I remember that from your course. Yes. So I'm going to the $1.25 tree store and I'm going to get, and it's a great craft activity, and all the kids love beads and playing with those things.
Absolutely.
And it's so versatile because you can do it. You can use it for all these different ways, breaking down, decoding the sounds in words, or words in sentences, or syllables. And I love it. Thank you.
It's a fun one.
That's perfect. And it is fun. And they can pick their own colors. Yes, we can do choice. Yes. My head's already going to all these different, we can do requesting to get your beads. Look, I love it. It's the SLP in me coming out of all these ways that we're gonna
absolutely
have this craft activity. Well, Margo, this is fascinating. I know that you have, you've got courses on speechtherapypd.com. You're part of the SLP Hub. Tell us, where can people find out more about you and the resources that you have available? Where do they go?
Wonderful. So a couple of places. One would be on Speech Therapy PD. If you go to courses and you just put in my name in the search, it will pop up the courses. So the course that we're actually talking about today is that there is a free 1-hour course, and it is called Speech to Print, the role of, I have to read it, of the SLP for literacy. So again, Speech to Print, the role of SLP for literacy, and that's a free 1-hour course that's available. And it really is, it provides all that information in regard to, it's mostly on that morphology, phonology piece. So on that decoding piece, with just a little, with all kinds of strategies, and then just a little bit of extra information in regard to that morphosyntax in the semantics piece. So a little bit for that listening comprehension, but really based on that other one. And then there's a couple of other, like I said, you'll also see there's SLP and literacy, what this means to me, literacy and dyslexia. And then there's also a child seminar that I did with Sarah James this last summer. And all of my presentations on there are specifically for morphology piece of it. Okay. I often feel like we kind of forget about morphology, and it's so important for phonology. It's so important for semantics. It's so important in regard to all of those pieces. And then also my website, which is courtercommunications.com. So my last name, communications.com. There is a section on there that if you go to more across the top and you go to therapy materials, all kinds of materials there for you to use. You just create your own account. And then in regard to some of the other areas that I love, if you go to courses or workshops, there's several listed there. And then also see me on the SLP Hub. Another big piece of that literacy, as we talked about with Dr. Season's stories, is that narrative development. And so many of the students that we see with language disorders are also delayed in that narrative development. And so I am fortunate on the SLP Hub through Speech Therapy PD to do a deep dive study group on narrative development. And that has been a lot of fun. And I hope that, I know there's a place you can sign up for a wait list. So hopefully we'll have the opportunity to do that again.
Ah, that's great. So for everybody who's listening, everything that Margo just shared is going to be available on a link. Just drop down below this episode and you'll see all of these links available where you can just click and go to all of the different places that she is mentioning. So thank you so much, Margo, for sharing all of your wisdom and all of these golden nuggets with our listeners on this episode today. And for everybody else, again, it's March, it's National Reading Month. So we encourage our listeners to really get in there and celebrate this month. And some of the ways that you can do that is you can check out diverse books at your local library. You can have a book swap with a friend, give them some of your favorites, take some of their favorites, inspire some new stories, or have your kids go ahead and share. You can consider donating maybe diverse and inclusive books to libraries or schools or families in need. You can decide to maybe take your therapy students they can travel with their mind. You can check out some books where you can take kiddos on a new adventure to maybe a new place that they haven't been before. You could also consider creating a book challenge where you can challenge readers to see how many books they're able to complete in a certain amount of time. And this can include picture books as well. Another thing you can do is you can check out Margo's course on speechtherapypd.com. Again, she mentioned this is a free course. It's called From Speech to Print, the Role of the SLP for Literacy with Margo Kinzer Courter. So again, that's on speechtherapypd.com. For other topics, when you subscribe to speechtherapypd.com, you're going to get 1 year access to over 800 live and on-demand courses where you're also going to be able to scoop up those ASHA CEUs while you're learning. And if you're new to this site, no worries. They do have free courses you can check out, such as the one that we mentioned here today, to give you a feel for how the courses work and what you can learn. If you found this video helpful, go ahead, give it a thumbs up. We also want to hear from you. So feel free to comment in the comment section below. Tell us what you like, tell us what you learned. We can get some conversation flowing. You can give us feedback. If you have any questions, go ahead and post them there. And we'll take that information and we will meet you back here next week as we are answering more of those golden questions that SLPs and SLPAs are asking. We have the answers for you. We will see you then.